to do a general look at aim. So that's what we're going to do. There is a number of resources that I will link, but when I put this in a blog post, all it is going to be, I'm just going to put this shit on YouTube unedited. I'm not going to bother cutting it or anything like that. I'll just record it, put it on YouTube, and then that's it. Because there really isn't much point on me putting that much effort into this, because the amount of talking that I'm going to do is going to be the effort. And if I put any more into it, I'm probably going to end up crying. So the general consensus is that there isn't many resources for TF2 in terms of people and aiming, because I find that when you hit like a certain level in TF2, when you hit the top, the big boys, the Prem, you will find that there is, funny enough, not that many decent new players. As much as it's a bit dreadful to say that, they all sort of lack something. Case in point, the only real sort of, I mean, this is mainly aim-wise, the only sort of player that sort of has really sort of impressed me, that's not, or is just in Prem, is probably Shadowburn, like Forsaken as well. These people have got a good DM, like to a very good level. I mean, if you look at some of the Prem players that have been around, like Zebo, he's been around for ages, like really good aim. Jukebox before he stopped playing, insane good aim. And there hasn't really been a player that has sort of risen up and hit that sort of like level, especially quickly. Probably the quickest people that have ever done it is mainly Mike. He got to the top very quickly and was very known for having good aim. Shadowburn again came from pretty much nowhere. Yeah, these sort of players are all sort of lacking. You still get a few good ones like Quad, Beaven as well. Scouts that have ridiculous aim that have just sort of come through because they put the effort in and they sort of know what to do and how to make the most out of it. Now, I'm not the best aimer in the world, but I do have pretty decent DM, which comes from a lot of playing. I can play sniper pretty well. Soldier, I'm pretty good at. I'm pretty sure that if I actually played soldier as my main, I'd be a better soldier than I am a Doorman. But I like playing Doorman. I like playing soldier, but I don't like playing soldier seriously. I like it more as a DM sort of class that I can just enjoy every so often. It's a bit like sniper. I like playing sniper, but sort of doing it all the time is a bit tedious, whereas Doorman is a lot better. I don't have to put as much, I don't have much time to put as much effort into keeping my aim up to a good level all the time. Whereas with Doorman, you're not really that aim dependent. It's just mainly knowledge and shit like that you've got to worry about. So yeah, basically, so if we do about the general, a general rundown. So this is going to be pretty much related to every single class. Well, I say every single class, but any class that requires tracking, flicking, or anything like that. So even engineers, I guess it would apply to that, because even engineers have to track, provided that you use the shotgun. So yeah, the general way of aiming, there's two. You have tracking, and then you have flicking. So with tracking, that is obviously when you launch something or you're following something, and you keep a track of the movement using your mouse to the best that you can. This obviously is a more consistent way of aiming. Providing that you're good at it, you'll be able to keep your crosshair on a target for longer, and yeah, it just generally means more accuracy. It's more preferable in obviously classes like Scout and stuff, where you're going to be using it more. Flicking is generally, you shoot, you don't really aim, you sort of just do a flick. So you launch your target up, you don't look at him, and then you just flick to the left or whatever, and he's dead, hopefully. This aim is not as, well, yeah, it's not as consistent. There's more room for error. However, I would say it's a lot quicker than tracking, because tracking requires you to be on the target the most, whereas flicking, you can just do knee-jerk shots very, very quickly in quick succession. Now, in general, I would say if you can do a mixture of the both, that is what you want to be able to do. Your aim really needs to be a mixture of tracking and aiming. You'll probably see more flicking when if you play sniper. If you play sniper, you'll see more flicking then. Obviously, when an enemy comes up close, most of the time, with a few exception of incredibly amazing snipers and hackers, that you will find. I've never used net fake lag. I've never seen the reason to use net fake lag. The map is called TR Rocket Shooting 2 BSB. I will try and find links at the end, and again, it is all going to be on the blog post with all the resources that I've mentioned here. So I'm not going to answer those any questions anymore. If somebody else can do it in chat, I'd be very, very appreciative of that. Anyway, what was I saying? I think it was something about flicking. But yeah. Oh yeah, it was if you can have a balance between tracking and flicking, that's what you're going to want to do. And obviously, as I was saying, in sniping, that's when you find like a very, very good use of flick shots most of the time. It's just mainly muscle memory. Now, muscle memory, I'll get down to maybe briefly at a later point. But I don't want to dwell on it now too much. Now, in terms of all this, there is a few things that you sort of need to go through. One of them is sensitivity. Now, with sensitivity, this is sort of like quite a big sort of grey area. The reason being is that there's a choice. Well, everybody says, oh, sensitivity is all preference, just pick what you want and shit like that. I don't think that that is necessarily true. I think that there is a point when you need to have like a reasonable sensitivity. Most people will have, I don't know, ridiculous sensitivity and it just won't work. Now, my sensitivity per 360 that I've just worked out now is 18.1, so that's 1150 DPI and an in-game sensitivity of 2 with no Windows multiplier, raw input turned on and all that shit. Now this gives me a good balance between tracking and flicking. So one way of practicing general tracking is to just go onto any server and just track. So all you need to do is just look at the person. Now another way of doing it, so again this is going to be a resource that I'll be linking later. It was done by somebody called, I think his name was Razil. How do I turn these people to stop moving? I know there is one. Where the fuck are you? There we go. There we go. Yeah, so one of the ways in one of these resources that I would say I found, but I didn't. But one of the ways to sort of generally practice your track and aim, I'll link the resource again because it is very, very good, is to just go a relatively fast class like scout and then just follow the player and just change your movement as much as you can and keep yourself on one point. Notice that mine is incredibly shit because, well, I don't play scout that much, so the aim for me is relatively joggy. You'll notice that when I'm moving, you can see sort of very, very, very coarse jutters. That is probably because, yeah, again, I'm not used to the move speed anymore. It doesn't really help. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit iff in this example, but the basis is still there. So if you're playing scout or anything like that, this is a very, very good way of just practicing the basics. You just need to be able to track and spin around the person. What you'll notice is now, as I get closer, sometimes my aim is starting to sort of falter. So I'm trying to get onto his head as much as I can, but sometimes it's overshotting it and it's going too far around. So that basically means that my sensitivity or my aim or my head is not keeping up with my movement. It's not so much of a bad thing, but in these terms, this is when flicking would come into it. So if I were to spin around this guy and I start losing track of it, then I would just flick onto that person and just shoot. It's relatively hard to explain, but you could sort of get the general idea. But this guy, WARHURYEAH, we pretty much gave you a very, very good basis of how to do it, how to keep a contact on somebody. He even added crouching. Now the game that he played was Wolfenstein, I think, so it's a different game altogether, but that game required a lot more hit scan than sort of TF2 did. I mean, TF2 does require hit scan quite a bit, especially if you're playing Scout, but that's only for really one class, maybe two if you're going to include the sniper and stuff like that. But it's just basically try and keep your mouse on that dude as much as you can. Now, going into sensitivity, so mine is on 18 centimeters for 360, so it's going to take 18 centimeters to go from here to here again. So most people, and sometimes you can change the sensitivity depending on how you're playing. Now, what you probably find is, if I ever play Scout, for example, or somebody that doesn't normally play Scout, when they actually play it in like a double mix, a pickup or anything like that, they'll get quite close to people, because that's when flicking is more effective. So if you have a very, very high sensitivity, let's say, let's have a look. So some people, yeah, 4. So this will move it down to 9 centimeters. Now some people do actually have this sensitivity, but you'll notice that obviously keeping a track on a smaller target is a lot more difficult. So as I'm trying to, however, if I go closer, it is now a lot easier for me, providing that I didn't run out of mouse map, for me to keep on his head than it did with my previous sensitivity. That's because it requires a smaller movement. So what you probably find is someone that plays Soldier with a high sensitivity, when they play Scout, you'll find them, they'll get more up close to you because it's easier for them. And when they're further away, if the players start moving, they'll do sort of like weird flick shots. So yeah, that is incredibly difficult for it to happen. Now if I lower my sensitivity, and put it down, so what I've got here is 36. Now obviously this is going to be a little bit iffy because I, again, haven't played this class in a fucking long time. If I try and keep a track of this person from like a longer distance, it's a lot easier for me to do it. Now obviously this person's standing still, but let's put it this way, if you can't track when someone's fucking standing still and you're moving, you're not going to be good at all. So these little practices will just make your aim consistent when it needs to be. Because there's so many fucking times when you'll, let's say, there'll be bad lands, you've gone on to mid, the enemy's pushing your choke, the medic's standing behind, he's literally just standing there, you'll take a shot and you'll miss. And it's these sort of things, when you do consistent repetitive movements, that will make it a lot easier for you to hit it in the long run. Now one thing that you'll notice as well is if I try and keep the same sensitivity but I'll go closer, it is now a lot easier, well, I was going to say a lot easier, it's now a lot harder for me to actually track it unless I do like bigger mouse movements. So now what I'm using, if I can actually line it up, here's some production value. I wasn't actually planning on doing this at all, but let me just see if I can move my camera into position. That's a lot easier for me to get my point across. There we go. So when I had my normal sensitivity, which is obviously 2, like you notice that most of it is wrist, and that is pretty much it, and that will pretty much remain on my wrist. So that is pretty much what I'm comfortable. Mine is predominantly just wrist movements. I can then sort of use my entire arm when I'm doing like greater movements, but predominantly it is all around the wrist. When you sort of move down to a lower sensitivity, my webcam moves back up a little bit. Come on. This is why I should really think about cutting out. Okay, I'm just going to move my mouse up a little bit. Come on. Stay. It's moving. It's moved down again. I should really sort of consider cutting this out, but I can't. It's going to take too long. But yeah, it is now starting to become more arm-based. So it means that predominantly my tracking is moving by my entire arm and not so much by my wrist. Because if I were to do it with my wrist, I'd have to keep on lifting up my mouse and moving it back, and as you can see, the amount of traction that I'll lose and the amount of accuracy that I miss is insane. Now that's obviously when you're very, very up close. So even so, as you can see, I'm starting to run out of mouse map to keep up with this guy. So when you've got a lower sensitivity, the main point of aiming, where I would mainly say for myself, when I used to play Scout, is to keep your distance. So this is pretty much the glory distance that you want to keep hold of. I maybe just hit myself in my Boston fashion, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry. But anyway, you're able to keep up with tracking from a safer distance a lot easier. And as you can see, you're still able to dish out a lot of damage. Now obviously, again, everybody's standing still, so this is all going to be a little bit key with. So yeah, it's a bit off. I've killed all the people that I had, which is annoying. But yeah, you sort of get the idea in sort of terms of sensitivity. So when you're a scout, no, I don't want criticals. That's fine. Which one is the one that stops people moving? This is it. Then why was it telling me about criticals? I just need to wait for some extra bots to spawn. So if I move everything back to normal, and I now switch back to the soldier class, so you get sort of like the idea as to what you want to achieve with Scout. You need to have like a sensitivity that is going to enable you to fight and be incredibly accurate. Oh man, that is a lot of fucking bots. I don't know how this has happened. That is literally the entire fuck. Maybe if I kill some, they'll split up a bit. Actually no, it's because it's on respawn waves, isn't it? Never mind. So yeah, as I was saying, with Scout, you want to be able to keep a consistent aim but able to keep your distance. If you stay too sort of close to people and you've got a low sensitivity, you're going to struggle to keep up. So most of the time you just need to sort of like move around your enemy. You don't want to sort of go up close and personal unless you've got like a sensitivity that can keep up with it, which most of the top scouts, they'll have like a sensitivity above 20, maybe 30 centimeters. Some players have about 50 centimeters, 60, 70 centimeters for a 360, which is insane. But the amount of effort that you'll have to do to be able to keep up and track people is insane. Now, depending on what class you're going to play, will obviously depend on your accuracy. Now most scouts, because all they have to do is track most of the time, with the exception of sniping, they can get away with having this higher sensitivity. When you're playing a soldier though, you want to be able to do both. So you want to be able to flick, hit air shots when it's needed, but you also want to be able to actually have a bit of tracking with shotgun aim. Now, one thing that I normally find with most bad players, I'm using bad loosely, I don't actually mean they're bad. They'll have very, 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 very poor shotgun aim. Now, shotgun is probably not the scattergun, but the actual shotgun can probably be the most overpowered like item in a game in a really good soldier's hand. It shoots quicker than the scout scattergun. So in theory, if you hit 2 shots with your shotgun, like I think it's 90 damage that it will do on a scout, you will kill it quicker than that scout can kill you. You know, this is just the sort of damage that a soldier can do. It's ridiculous, just from like one weapon. But not many people will actually use it. They normally just stick to soldiers. I'm pretty sure I turn criticals off, but never mind, I'm not that fussed. And it's actually quite important for people to have good shotgun aim. Now when you're aiming, as I said before, you want to be able to flick, and you want to be able to track, which is why I've stuck with the sensitivity that I've got, because I can do both with no problems. Obviously flicking is a little bit more inconsistent than tracking, but this is just sort of one of the things that you have to deal with. But you'll get the general idea, and I do recommend practicing and settling on a sensitivity that gives you the best of both worlds, especially if you're a soldier. If you're a scout, keep to a relatively low sensitivity, but the only problem is that if somebody comes up behind you and stuff like that, or you get jumped on, you're going to struggle fighting very, very close quarters. But providing that you've got good positioning and you play smart, then you won't have to worry about that. But as a soldier, I would definitely say make sure that you keep a decent amount of shotgun aim. Obviously, sensitivity again is still personal preference, but do keep it within reason, because there'll be quite a few people that have like a ridiculous sensitivity. I think one of them was Traxantic. He had like a retarded sensitivity where all he did was just sort of flick around everywhere. He was sort of a player that thought he was better than he actually is. Needless to say, his frag moves looked awesome though, because like when you see somebody with this sort of aim and they actually hit something, you're always like, wow, so good. But your shotgun aim is just going to be hilarious because you can't keep up. Your head can't work, so all you rely on your aim on is just muscle memory. That's it, which is all very well and good, but you know, people aren't going to repeat the same actions. Muscle memory comes in when you repeat the same action over and over again. So it's going to be more unreliable unless somebody attacks you in the exact same position over and over again, which is going to be pretty much impossible. So yeah, general sensitivity, I would keep it on. Sensitivity for down man changes because you don't really have to aim. But yeah, give me a second, I just need to. So I've done that now. Another thing is the general setup, but I won't go into that too much because I was going to talk about that loosely. But when you're set up, the only thing I would recommend is that you give yourself enough space. You have a mouse mat that is like big enough to move around. But obviously some things can't be. Obviously you can't keep everything the same. You can't control the fact that I have a tiny little desk because that's all my parents will give me and stuff like that. That stuff you just can't control. I'm going to put my camera back on my face now because I'll need it. Now, one thing I was going to go on to as well is general training, but I've already gone over that. It's just basically try and keep track of somebody as much as you can. I used to do this quite a bit, so I'm not as keen anymore because I have a job, I have a fiance, I work full time, and I've obviously got to play TF2. But if you're pretty much a young person, doing this stuff will help dramatically. And the best thing is that it will carry off over into every single shooting-based game. When I play stuff like CSGO, I hardly play CSGO. Like, it's very rare that I do. I haven't played any form of Counter-Strike properly for maybe about 4 or 5 years. But even when I go on Counter-Strike Go, I still get called a hacker by most people just because I can actually aim. Which is good because you can make people cry. Even though I fucking hate the game because I found it as frustrating as I did like 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, these sort of practices will carry off over into other games, and it is very, very good that you learn this stuff because once you've done it, then that's fine. The one thing I would suggest as well is that you try and keep to a sensitivity and stay on to it. Changing sensitivity only makes your aim even more inconsistent, so it's fucking terrible for you to do that. And I would not recommend. Maybe do it for the first few weeks to try and find yourself a good balance and an aim that a sensitivity that you'll find will suit you more. But don't sort of be changing it all the time because yeah, it will have a very, very negative effect. I used to do it often when I was playing in Div 6 as Scout. Yeah, I had very, 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 very inconsistent performances because I just changed it all the time. But now I just stick with one and that's it. Every so often I make minor adjustments depending if I've got a new mouse or mouse mat, but nothing great. I won't jump from, let's say, 20 centimeters for a 360 to 10. I won't half it. It will just be like a few centimeters adjustment on my aim. Now another thing that people wanted me to talk about like ages ago was mouse acceleration. That is again a personal preference. It has benefits because you can track and you can flick quite easily. But yeah, I don't know much about that, so I'm not going to talk about it. There's no point in me talking about something I don't know. It is bad to have a different sensitivity for different classes. Like, it is horrendously bad. It just creates a terrible effect of inconsistencies. Like, it really, really does. I used to do it, but please, for the love of God, don't. Because Scout, it's a tracking class. Soldier, you have tracking. like Pyro, you have tracking. Oh, I don't have a shotgun. Okay, now I have tracking. Even fucking like the flamethrower is relatively track based. Heavy again tracking. Engineer again tracking. You have pistol. You have shotgun. You get my point. There's quite a lot of tracking based classes. Changing your sensitivity for every single one is just gonna like be a massive ball ache. There is literally no point behind it. I know some people that do it for every single classes, but there's just no point. It really isn't. It's just gonna like fuck you up every single time. And yeah, just avoid it at all costs. Like unless you generally have to, but I can't imagine any situation when you actually need to change the sensitivity for some classes. It's just not beneficial enough. It just annoys me when people have like, I see it sometimes when people have different configs. You look at them, they'll have like sensitivity 2 for a soldier, they have sensitivity 3 for like a sniper, 1 for scout, and it's just, it does not make sense, because it means that if your class, let's say scout, that will off class every so often and your sensitivity's changed, then you don't gain any benefit from it. You will have complete inconsistency, and yeah, it's just stupid. But anyway, so I've gone through that. I've actually got a little notepad here. That's just to tick off everything that I've talked about. So we've talked about the muscle memory. We've talked about the aim training. Now, I've done classes pretty much, but I'll go into position a little bit more as well. So put in what I've spoken into TF2, which I've briefly done. So to recap, in general, with your aim as a scout, you want to be able to go through various points where you can track in decent distances. So I recommended obviously an aim that will make you be able to track from a long distance, because that is when you're going to be more lethal. If a soldier shoots, you've got more time to react, whereas up close, if you're going to be against a soldier, you really have to nail those meat shots in quick succession, and that's not going to happen most of the time. The only thing that a soldier will have to do is just shoot on the floor twice and he'll probably fucking kill you. Whereas you want to be able to face them from a long engagement. It puts a lot more pressure on the soldier as well, because you'll probably have a decent ground advantage. The rockets come out delayed. The only time that you're going to get smashed on is if the soldier switched to a shotgun, but that's going to be very, very, very difficult to find a soldier that can hit a shotgun like effectively. Yeah, and soldier again, you want to be able to have like a decent sensitivity. That can mean that you can flick, you can track, you can do pretty much everything. One thing that to also mention, if you look at sort of Quake players, they have, some of them have a more tracking based, which is sort of understandable. I think when you play Quake Live, your aim does need to be more track based, because you've got lightning gun, you've got the machine gun. I haven't played it in ages, so I'm not really too clued up. Shotgun, stuff like that. Rockets as well, because Quake Live isn't really that much of a fast-paced game. It's good to have like a lower sensitivity, so you can place rockets a little bit cleaner. When you play, for example, if you ever played CPMA mod, which is pro mode for Quake, higher sensitivities work out well. There is a lot of flick-based shooting, so you notice people that when they sort of spin round, they'll do that whole flick behind, hit somebody from like a fucking million miles away, and it's fucking ridiculous. Like, they aim because the movement speed is ridiculously quick, and your aim has to keep up with that, which is probably the pinnacle of like aiming, I would say. If you ever play CPMA mod, it's insane. Like the people that you play against. I'd recommend watching like the Frag movies. I think one of them is called A Bulgarian Odyssey, where you have, I think it's Hal and I think the other guy's called NRZO, I think that his name is. But yeah, like that movie is fucking ridiculous, because the amount of tracking that they do and the amount of flick shots that they do is fucking ridiculous, especially at the speeds that they're going with. So yeah, if you can ideally keep a good amount of consistency like that, you would probably wreck in TF2, like absolutely 100% smash people. So there isn't really a class where you can get the best out of all of that. unless you play Highland, you just play heavy and scout and stuff. But there will always be a point when you might play soldier or a projectile class. With Dairyman, because I play that class, it is completely personal preference, I would say. With Dairyman, you don't really have to aim, apart from with pipes. Like, that's the only time that you really need to aim. And I really would recommend just practicing pipes, because I see, well, it's a mistake that I made, but all I did was practice pipes in DM mod, and that just meant that anytime I played a match, I would just walk around with my pipes out all the time. I still do that now, and it's still incredibly stupid, because there'll be points when I really do need to swap, and I just don't, because I'm too fixated on hitting that air pipe. And I find quite a few new Dairyman are exactly the same. Aim isn't really that important, but I would just say maybe make sure that you can hit pipes consistently, but it's not the be all and end all, because the way that pipes come out is a little bit too inconsistent. The way that they land is too inconsistent. Unless you hit a direct, you're not going to be able to hit anything. So yeah, don't get too wound up on it. Like, Dairyman is more positional play and sticky traps and all that boring shit. But the only way I can get away with pipes so much is because I had absolutely no life for a point. And if you really want to get good quickly, I would not recommend just playing with pipes. Yes, you'll put a massive detriment to your team that you're playing on for just focusing on one sort of gimmicky weapon. And I don't really think you can aim with stickies. You just put them on the floor and you detonate them. So maybe practice left and right clicking faster. That's like the only bit of advice I can give. But yeah, if you do have to practice pipes, just do it onto your walkway. Try and stay away from MG and deathmatch servers, because they don't really contribute that much. And it then actually just makes you even more focused on just using pipes too much. So yeah, just avoid doing it as much as you can. Well, I haven't done this in ages, so I'm pretty shit. But yeah, like, with pipes you will miss a lot. You'll hit a glory pipe every so often, but I think too many people, they always want to go for the glory pipe, so it's just not ever going to happen. If you're always trying to go for the glory pipe, you're playing the wrong class. Or you should at least just be playing in double mixes and not playing in the team, because you're going to piss off your team by doing it too much. Aim is not necessary as a medic unless you really want to, I don't know, hit arrows better, but those are two sort of inconsistent. Next thing, MG and practicing. So when you want to warm up, there's two general ways, well, there's three. You can do what I prefer to do, which is go into a private server, play walkway or rocket shooting map, and just deal with all that crap. I will just sit there for ages and just practice, just do little inconsistent, do consistent aiming, because that means that if somebody jumps at you in a straight line, you can fucking wreck them straight away. Nobody ever does, but it's just in the event that somebody does, you're consistent in doing so. I'm gonna hope that I can maybe get into a server so I can talk about aim a little bit more whilst I'm doing it, because you can't really explain something unless you've got the opportunity to show it. But unfortunately, I need to find somebody that is good, that I can get wrecked by. Actually, I'm going to leave the server because it's too loud. With deathmatch servers, I'd only recommend deathmatch servers if you have been out of the game for ages. Deathmatch servers create over-aggressive players. I only play deathmatch servers when I haven't played in a long time, or if I need to, or if I've changed something drastically in my setup. So if I've changed my mouse, I'll play on a DM server. If I've get a new mouse mat, change my monitor, something that's significant in my setup, I will play a DM server so I can get used to it quicker. MG is really good because it will just literally help you aim. It doesn't create an overly aggressive playstyle. but it just depends on what you're wanting to achieve. Because it's so different from the actual game itself, you're not really going to incorporate bad habits from MG into an actual match environment, whereas in DM servers you can. Because I knew some people that would just play DM servers all the fucking time, and obviously in a DM server, when you kill someone you get health back, and these sort of bad habits like overly aggressiveness just means that your head just sort of goes into a default state where all you need to do is kill, and then you realise, oh fuck, I've got no ammo or shit like that. Oh, it's okay because I'll just regenerate it about 2 seconds later. So yeah, I would not recommend it. With MG, it's very, very good to do class on class matchups. If you can find a friend, that is something that I would 100% recommend. When I first started and when MG first came out, I just had a group of people that I would just ask, will you play MG with me? Like, I'll play a Demoman, they'll play a scout, and I'll just practice hitting scouts. Or we'll do scout and stuff like that. It helps create like a decent one-on-one environment against your weakest class, and I would always recommend going and setting this up so you're playing against your weakest class if you can. So obviously, naturally for a Demoman, the weakest class to be put up against for him is the scout, so I would just ask someone, play on Badlands middle, I'll go Demoman, you go scout, and you just try and kill me. And that's all I would do, and it's a very, very, very good way of improving quickly in terms of aim. One thing I would say, if you're going to practice as soldier, the only thing that I don't like about MG is the maps. So on Spire, I don't think I'm going to have the time because I'm probably going to need to kill this guy. There is some terrible clipping issues on this map. So what that means is you can suddenly, I think if I can find it, yeah, I am not shooting at that rock, but oh, he's left, that's alright. I am not like actually shooting here, but look, this is what I mean, like the clipping issues on this map is insane. So it does create sort of a bad environment to actually practice. Badlands middle is good, however, again, there are too many holes in the map. I can't really go on it now, but you'll know what I mean on the train. There's too many places for your rocket to sort of slip through. There's gaps in the trains as well for your rockets to slide through. There is just too much stuff on that map that is going to like cause problems. So I would just recommend, I'm just checking my phone. Yeah, it's nothing. But yeah, it's pretty bad on some of these maps. There is one which is Ammo Mod. Ammo Mod is a very, very, very good way to practice general DM against a soldier. The reason being is that you're on flat land against another soldier, and it literally just makes you practice juggling and general stuff like that. It's probably the most consistent way to practice your aim. I personally hate it because it's quite a slow deathmatch environment and it's not really for me. But if you do want to get good at soldier, I recommend just practicing an Ammo Mod because it means that your accuracy when you want to juggle people and stuff is really, really good, and it does improve rapidly. I just play Spire and stuff just for fun, just to sort of get my aim up and stuff as a general warm-up, and it's just the way I prefer to practice. I can't really practice my class on MG apart from if I play like versus a scout, Badlands middle on Viaduct, or if I practice Endiff, but Endiff is boring. Another map that is actually really good to practice MG on, especially as soldier, is Granary middle, because it doesn't have any of those really, 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 really lame places for you to sort of miss your rockets through. It's quite an even playing field as well, and it also invites the other player to jump, which is why I'm not really a fan of Ammo Mod so much, because you're practicing a somewhat unrealistic environment most of the time, because I don't ever remember playing a game of TF2 where it was all ground base. Whereas on maps like Granary, it can be ground base. Because of the crates, you've got to be very accurate with rockets as well. So yeah, that is also very, very good to actually play on. But yeah, when you play Spire or anything, you'll notice that my aim is very, very different to how I do it in matches, but that is just mainly because of confidence. If you ever see somebody that plays MG and you play them in a game, they'll probably be a lot more shit and their aim's not as good. That's just because they don't know how to sort of get their aim from MG in game, and it's just confidence. And it's just sort of, in MG you're just gonna die and respawn, but in game you're gonna die, and that's it. You have to wait 7 seconds, you might lose a round and shit. But if you can sort of get your confidence and your MG ability into a match environment, you'll probably be unstoppable. But yeah, as you can see, like even though it's just juggling him on the platform, but this is what I mean in terms of, you notice that when I have rockets out, it's mainly a flick base. Ah, that was strafe. Yeah, it's mainly flicking, and then as soon as I switch to my shotgun, it's more tracking. That is just how I do things. There is still a bit of flicking when I use my shotgun, but I try and track as much as I can. When it's close range, it's a lot harder. But it just means, like, I'm pretty sure that my shotgun aim is probably the only reason why I'm good at Soldier. Because my rockets just aren't as good. But my shotgun aim has been pretty decent. I think when I was playing MG, like, you can see the accuracy, and like, my shotgun accuracy was like very, 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 very high. Like, I think there was even when I played against somebody, like the game was pretty close on MG, but I still had like about an 85% accuracy of my shotgun. That is just literally, oh, it's Marmite. This is someone that's not half bad and he beats me sometimes. So you see what I mean. When you play against somebody that is as good as you on MG, it's a lot more entertaining, it pushes you to the limit. And the good thing is that it sort of irons out little mistakes. You'll sort of understand what you're lacking quite often as well. Like if you play against someone and you get smashed, you'll learn quite a bit. Although what I don't like is the fact that he's just jumped to try and get the high ground, cheeky bastard. That is one thing I would suggest that you don't do. Don't do anything on MG that you won't do in a game. So like, you would never, like ever jump up to kill somebody. Unless you're like the biggest bellend in the world, it just doesn't happen. So just try and play MG in all DM like you would in a game. Don't do anything cheap. There will be people that will do cheap stuff to you, but just don't do it, because it again creates a terrible like MG environment. And yeah, it's too unrealistic, and there's just no point. Is this the same one, mate? I think it is. Yeah, shooting on floor is okay, right? When I play MG, you get one free jump. As soon as you land on the floor, anything goes. Unless, like, I completely wreck you on the floor, or you fall to the floor straight away, and you've got enough health to come back. If, like, you're one shotgun shot away from dying, I will just shoot you on the floor just to end it. One thing I hate the most is when somebody's weak and they sit on the floor and they just shoot you, because it just kills the game. This is why I'd only recommend playing against people on MG that you know, because I would ideally just say make sure they're better than you, so you actually gain practice out of it, but it's because then you know that somebody you're going to be playing against is high quality, you know? That's also what I'm doing, I can't help it. It's like the gayest place to be on MG. But yeah, actually that's a good example. What I was just doing then, that was quite flick based, because I'm like close quarters. Yeah. Ah. That was pretty bad. There we go. But yeah, you sort of get the general idea when I talk about aim, what you have to try and do, what you need to achieve. But yeah, the only thing, I think this pretty much wraps up everything in terms of aiming. If